First for breaking news and the best live sport.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Your call. Abu Qatada will be freed on bail later today after winning the latest stage of his long legal fight to avoid deportation to Jordan. Is this a triumph for the rule of law? Charity Freedom from Torture says it is, because he could be tried in Jordan using evidence obtained through torture. Keith Best is its chief executive.
We as a country subscribe to the rule of law, and we must apply that rule of law equally to those people whom we like and those people whom we don't like.
Robin Simcox from the think tank The Henry Jackson Society says he's dangerous and should be kicked out of the country.
This is somebody who came to the country illegally and has spent a decade here encouraging young British Muslims to fight and die in places like Chechnya, Afghanistan, legitimised suicide bombing.
What do you think? Are you glad we're taking a strong stance on torture, or are we being too soft on a man many want to see the back of? Abu Qatada is staying, for now, in Britain. Is this a triumph for the rule of law, or are we being too liberal for our own good? 0500 909 693. Text me, 85058. So is this a triumph for the rule of law, the fact that Abu Qatada is staying, for now, in Britain, or are we just being too liberal for our own good? Are we the suckers? Peter Bone joins us, who takes a hard line on this. He's been on this your call business before. Tory MP Peter Bone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello to you. And John Cooper, QC.
Good morning, Nicky.
How are you, John? Leading
I'm well, good to talk to you.
Human rights and criminal barrister. You too. Steve's in Morecambe, Mary's in Manchester. Steve, what do you think?
Well, I can't say I was shocked, because we've heard all this before, but I was horrified. There's no mention yesterday on the Radio 4 PM programme about my human rights. What about the human rights of people in this country who don't want to be blown up by suicide bombers?
Used to work in the immigration service, didn't you? Is that Steve Moxon, yeah?
No.
Oh, it's not. I do beg your pardon. I thought you were someone else. Carry on.
Oh, all right, never mind. Well, that's it. That's all I really wanted to say. I just think, it's all one-sided, this business of these terrorists. It's their human rights that everybody's concerned about, not the human rights of the people they want to blow up.
Do you think he's a danger?
Well, he's clearly a danger because he's in trouble in at least two countries. A lot of serious evidence suggesting that he is tied up with these people. Now, the problem is it's extremely difficult to get the evidence, and the human rights business is entirely devoted to stopping people from getting the information out of them by whatever means. Because I absolutely oppose torture, but there are other ways of doing it. They were stopping people from hacking phones and stopping people from hacking into people's computers and all this kind of stuff, so they could actually find something out. Our hands are tied. They have absolute ruthlessness and cynical cruelty, and we're
But this is the argument, though, Steve, isn't it? Aren't we better than that? Don't we necessarily have to rise above that sort of?
We can't rise above suicide bombers. You don't rise above a suicide bomb. If it goes off, it goes off.
Is he a suicide bomber? Is he encouraging suicide?
I think he's somebody who organises suicide bombing.
Right, okay, that's
promotes it.
Mary in Manchester. How do you respond to Steve?
Well, I think it's quite interesting that Steve says he absolutely opposes torture, but when it's clear that he doesn't absolutely oppose it, because one of the reasons I think the government advisors are continuously unsuccessful in securing extradition is because they come across as being a bit ambivalent about torture. And there's no real evidence to suggest that information or evidence acquired by torture is reliable. So,
but what about you being opposed to suicide bombers in this country? You're not opposed to them because you want the guy to get off.
No, I think, irrespective of what people have done, I'm absolutely opposed to suicid bombers. But I don't.
You don't want them caught, and you don't want the guy sent way to another.
Well, hang on, let Mary finish. Carry on. Sorry, Mary, we didn't just catch that.
There's no evidence that torture is successful in securing good evidence, good quality evidence.
That's not the point of the issue. The point of the issue is
I think the issue is about torture.
Another guy has come here from another country to blow people up, and we want to send him out, and they won't let us.
Yeah, I think it's fair enough to seek extradition because of his intent or because of inflammatory kind of preaching or whatever.
The appalling things he said, but if he's going to go to a place and he's being put on trial using evidence that has been obtained using torture, are you comfortable? Peter Bone, are you comfortable with that?
Well, that's not the case, of course, because the Jordanians aren't using torture.
No, but evidence
And they're not using
obtained.
evidence extracted by torture, that's quite clear. The only reason this terrorist or dangerous man, as the Home Secretary says, isn't on a plane back now is because of the European Court. Our Supreme Court said he should be sent home. So if our Supreme Court says he should be sent home, that's good enough for me. The Prime Minister wants him sent home, the Home Secretary wants him sent home, the Shadow Home Secretary wants him sent home, and the British people want him sent home. So I would say to Theresa May, get a grip and put him on a plane tonight.
Would that be practical, John Cooper?
Let's be very clear about this, and let's be very clear what the situation is. The Jordanian government have not been able to satisfy a court that evidence obtained by torture would not be used against this man. That is the clear ruling in this court, based on the evidence, having heard the evidence. So it's incorrect to say that evidence obtained by torture would not be used against him. The reason this man, and I've got no time one way or the other for the appalling allegations, and I emphasise allegations against him as well. We've got to be very careful, whatever our views of this man, before we start making potentially defamatory comments.
Well, we've already heard that he wants to blow us all up, John. We've already heard.
I shall carry on if I can, just for a moment, as I've been listening to everyone else's eloquent contributions. I think it's very, very important indeed to just get the perspective. The ruling yesterday was not a ruling, in my view, as far as he was concerned. It was a ruling against Jordan. Jordan could not satisfy the court that evidence obtained by torture would not be used against this man. And therefore, as a country that does not in any way support the use of torture in any way, manner or form, the court had no choice but to stop his extradition. That's the hard fact of it. Now, I can understand the concern being expressed by all contributors here. Of course I can. But the hard fact is that Jordan could not satisfy a court that evidence obtained by torture would not be.
Okay, your line's just coming in and out. If you could try and speak into the mouthpiece a little bit, John, that would be good. I think it's just fading out. That's all right.
I beg your pardon. Did you catch what I said?
We did, yes. I think I can safely say that we generally did. What do you make of the allegation, though? I mean, Steve from Morecambe there saying he's encouraging suicide bombing and wants to blow us all up.
Well, as I say, I'm not going to get involved with allegations. Let's put it this way, various other people have been involved with allegations in other spheres and have got their fingers burnt. Let's see what the evidence brings out at the moment. So I'm not making any comment upon allegations at the moment. All I'm simply saying is that Jordan had not satisfied a court that evidence obtained by torture would not be used to achieve a conviction. We can't make excuses, or we cannot make alterations for the rule of law and the law based on the fact that we do not like a particular man. The law has to apply equally, and we can't simply say because we do not like this man, the law on torture should be suspended. It has to apply to everyone, however unpleasant people may think they are.
Peter Byrne, isn't this a basic, fundamental Tory principle, adhering to and respecting the rule of law?
Oh, you're quite right, of course. And the rule of law should be the Supreme Court of this country, and the Supreme Court of this country says he can be sent home. So that is not the argument. The argument is that the European Court, this Mickey Mouse Human Rights Court, has interfered and stopped it. And as the Home Secretary stated, if it wasn't for their interference, he'd already be back in Jordan. I mean, people have got to take the balance. Are we going to stand up for the British people, the security of the British people, or are we going to stand up for this European court? And I think we should stand up for the British court. And other countries, I mean, Italy, for example, sent 2 terrorists back home. The European court said that was the wrong thing to do and fined them about £12,000. Now, £12,000 wouldn't be half a day spending on keeping this guy under surveillance. I mean, it is absolutely absurd, and I really do think that people trying to defend this person on the grounds that something has got to do with the rule of law, when our own Supreme Court says he should go home, seems to me to be rather far-fetched.
What crime is it? Yes.
May I say something, Nick, if I can here? It's very important we try to keep calm about this debate and not bring in human rights, European Court, or indeed political arguments about Europe, which are all interesting arguments, but for another place. This is an argument about the use of torture. This is an argument about a country that has not satisfied a court that it will not use torture or evidence obtained by torture against a man. And it's as self-contained as that. And I think that any reasonable person, any reasonable person, without shouting at each other, or indeed interrupting each other, any reasonable person would simply say they surely are against the use of torture to obtain evidence, which in any event, like your other contributor said, is tending to be unreliable in any event.
Are you against the use of torture, Peter Byrne, for obtaining evidence?
The the BBC seriously suggesting
I do not represent
that any
the BBC.
Conservative MP is in favour of torture?
No, I'm asking you a question. Are you seriously suggesting that a question determines the policy of an entire organisation, where I'm just trying to get an answer from you to see what you will say in this debate? It's a debate, Peter Bone. What do you think about the use of torture? You don't approve of it. Well, John Cooper is telling us that it will happen. He will be tried.
He's absolutely wrong.
That's better. Mary, do you want to come back in?
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, again, Peter Bowen is saying he's absolutely opposed to torture, but he quickly jumps into people are defending this individual, which is just not the case. You know, it's people who are opposed to the use of torture in order to obtain evidence, and the courts have said that they don't effectively believe, you know, what's being presented to them about countries saying that they won't use torture.
I mean, Mary makes the point. Mary makes the point well, if I may say so. None of us here who are simply supporting the decision made yesterday are in any way supporting this man. The evidence will, in due course, evidence obtained properly and with proper restraint, will, one hopes, come to the correct conclusion one way or the other here. Well, all we're simply saying is that people tortured into giving evidence, their evidence must surely be unreliable.
But the law in this case is completely one-sided. It is only considering the rights of the person who is threatening to organise terrorist activity. It's not considering the rights of the people.
Well, hang on. What crime has he committed?
Well, I don't know the details of why he's been in prison for such a long time. But
he's not been charged. He's not been found guilty of anything, and I think we should be very careful about what we say.
There is strong circumstantial evidence about his involvement in terrorist activities, very strong indeed. And I'm not an expert in law, and I'm not an expert in terrorism. But the people who have that knowledge are fully convinced that this guy has been a very important man.
And Peter Bone, the problem here is, of course, that this evidence, for various intelligence reasons, they say it is inadmissible.
Well, of course, he has been convicted of terrorist offence in Jordan, and our Supreme Court...
By the use of evidence obtained by torture.
Sorry, were you the gentleman that said don't interrupt?
All right, forgive me.
Yeah, thanks. Our Supreme Court has said that he wouldn't be tortured. Evidence used by torture allegedly would not be put into the case. Our Home Secretary has made it quite clear. The constitution of the Jordan has been changed on the whole issue. It is not this country, it's not our courts that say he shouldn't be sent home. It's because of a European court ruling. And basically people are saying that the European court should have precedence over our courts, and I just don't accept that.
May I say, Nicky, again, I must say that it's important your listeners come to a view one way or the other. No one here is, wanting to monopolise people's views, but they must have the facts. Let's keep the European political argument out of this. The fact is, a tribunal of 3 independent and esteemed judges listened to the evidence and were of the view that evidence obtained by torture may and could probably be used against him. His conviction, and I rather impolitely intervened a moment ago, but what I was going to say was his conviction, which has been obtained in Jordan, has been obtained through the use of torture evidence. That's the only argument. It's nothing to do with the Court of Human Rights. It's to do with...
It's nothing to do with his rampant xenophobia and his allegiances and the wonderful things he said about Osama bin Laden being wonderful. Mike, what do you say in London?
Well, I think it's outrageous that the likes of Peter Bone is suggesting that we go and that the government should ride roughshod over a court decision. We're here to... Sorry, the court... Yesterday's decision was a victory for the rule of law. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, brilliant. Yes, went funny. But anyway, yesterday's decision was a victory for the rule of law. We have, 10,000 troops or whatever in Afghanistan? We had Captain somebody or other, Barry, who died, who was shot dead by, on Sunday. He was there trying to enforce the rule of law. So there you have Peter Bone in his comfortable Westminster whatever, and he's insinuating that he's suggesting that the government should ride roughshod over the decision of a court, while troops are losing legs and arms and their lives trying to enforce the rule of law in another country.
This man came here on a false passport. He said a series of things. He has a series of allegations made. Is it?
It's irrelevant. By the way, if this man is so dangerous, if he has done all these things, since 1997, there's been over 300 paragraphs of new legislation passed, which cover, I believe, upwards on 500 pages of documents. Is there nothing in any of those paragraphs, sub-paragraphs, whatever, appendices, that can't be used to put this man into prison?
May I say, Nicky, also, what's of concern here is the very thing that we fight for in a democracy, that is the upholding of the rule of law and protection from torture. The very things that terrorists want to take away from us, we could actually take away from ourselves by sending this man back to a country who will obtain evidence that will convict him via torture. That's the very thing the terrorists want to inflict on us, an aberration of the rule of law. We cannot allow them to do it by the back door.
Thank you. It's 9:20. More of your thoughts to come. Here's Michelle. This is your call. Good morning. It is 9:22. Here is some news that's just coming in. Let me tell you this. There are calls for funding to be stopped to the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, the organisation involved in the BBC Newsnight report into child sex abuse, which wrongly implicated the former Conservative Party Treasurer, Lord McAlpine. 3 Conservative MPs have signed a Commons motion published this morning condemning what they call the appalling quality of the investigation, accusing the body of being totally discredited as a serious producer of quality journalism. The Bureau's editor, Ian Overton, has already resigned. It was a report led by the former 5 Live, Radio 4 and Newsnight presenter Angus Stickler. The MPs, led by Andrew Bridgen, call on organisations to fund the Bureau, including Oxfam, Save the Children and City University, to cut all ties and refuse to donate any more money to the body. The motion is also signed by fellow Tory MPs Philip Davis and Bob Blackman. That's just in. It's 9:23. Terry's in London. Hello, Terry. And also we welcome Fahad Ansari, who is Baba Ahmed's brother-in-law. This is another case, which we'll discuss in a minute. Good morning to you. Terry, what do you want to say?
Hello, Nicky. Yeah, Qatada come over here on a false passport. I'll deport him for that anyway. We should do it the French way and take the fine. Love or hate the French, when it comes to looking after their own people, they set them first. I think.
Your line's just cutting out a bit, but I'm getting your gist.
Yeah, like I say, he's here on a false passport. They should deport him and take the fine.
Yeah, and Mark in Cumbria. We'll take Mark as well. Hi.
Hi, Nicky.
Morning, Mark.
2 quick points. Yeah, 2 quick points. One is that I sincerely hope that these people who are saying the law is most important, I hope it is neither them nor their loved ones who are the victims of the next wave of suicide bombings. And secondly, it seems to me that they feel the law is more important than the people that the law is designed to serve and protect. And that is my point very quickly.
Well, stay there. It's good to talk to you again, Fahad. Give us a summation of your brother's case. This is very different from, obviously, Abu Qatada. Every case is very different from the other. So, your brother, born in London. Right, go on.
Yeah, no, Barbara's case is obviously very different. He's a British born-raised citizen, accused of a crime committed here, running a website. And he spent 8 years in prison without trial because the police, rather than give the evidence they seized from his home to the Crown Prosecution Service, they passed it to the American authorities, something the CPS were unaware of until late last year. Now, for 8 years, at taxpayers' expenses and at Barbara's own liberty, he was deprived of a fair trial in his country for a crime which was essentially allegedly committed in this country. Why we had to succumb to subcontract our criminal justice system to the United States or to any other jurisdiction is beyond me. It's almost identical fact pattern to the Gary McKinnon case, where he was accused of using his computer to hack into the Pentagon. In fact, in McKinnon's case, he admitted what he did, and he was the conduct directly targeted the Americans. Now, irrespective of his explanation for what he did, the point is that in McKinnon's case, he was allowed to stay in the UK, whereas in Barbara's case, he was extradited. And there really has to be an analysis of why one man accused of committing a crime from the computer in the UK was extradited, whereas another man accused of committing a crime from a computer in the UK was not.
And he was how old when he was accused of when he allegedly he was involved in these websites supporting Chechen and Afghan insurgents? How old was he at the time?
It would have been in the 1990s, mid-90s, so he'd have been about 21, 22.
Is he a very different man now?
I didn't know him back then in the 90s, but obviously anyone changes with time. 8 years in prison will change anybody. I mean, the fact that the tragedy is that, say he was prosecuted for that crime, Mickey, and convicted, he would have got probably a 7 to 10 year sentence in this country. He's already served over 16 years in this country, and now he's currently in 23-hour solitary confinement in the US.
He's had compensation as well, hasn't he, from at the High Court after admission by UK anti-terrorist police they subjected him to, quote, grave abuse tantamount to torture. Is that right?
Absolutely, that's correct, yeah. Jane DeRay, they physically abused him, left him with 73 injuries, 2 life-threatening, and they admitted all of this in the High Court, and they compensated him accordingly.
Now, I know that you say this is a triumph for the rule of law about Abu Qatada, but there could be a problem here for you, Fahad, in some people's eyes, because let's look at Abu Qatada. He's called on, according to the Middle East Media Research Institute, called on Muslims to kill the wives and children of Egyptian police. He said, according to The Guardian, he issued a fatwa authorising the killing of Jews, including Jewish children. He said Americans are no better than Jews to a congregation at Finsbury Park Mosque. There was no difference between English people, Jews and Americans. What else? There's a long list. He in a poem attributed to him appeared online praising Osama bin Laden, glorifying the attacks. In another sermon, he said to have stated it was not a sin for a Muslim to kill a non-believer for the sake of Islam. Isn't it dangerous for you, given what you've set out about your brother? And many people think there is a very, very strong case, and many right-minded people support you. Isn't there a danger you're associating yourself with a bad guy here?
Well, I mean, for me, it's the principle of the matter. Many of those who support Barber do it on the matter of principle. They might not support insurgency in Chechnya or Afghanistan. Well, on the matter of principle, they support Barber, not because of who he is or anything else, but it's a matter of the principle. Same with Abu Qatada. Now, you've mentioned a number of very serious issues, many of which, are quite abhorrent, and rightly so, to many of the British public and many normally decent human beings. The problem is, though, is that we've got laws to prosecute. Now, if you're saying he's done all these things, if you've got the evidence against him, why can you not prosecute him? I am really fed up of my taxpayers, your taxpayers, everybody's taxpayers' money being used by Theresa May to detain this guy, keep him under 24-hour surveillance when he's on bail, and then, not prosecute him. Kent police 2 days ago arrested a teenager for posting a picture of him burning a puppy on Facebook, saying it was offensive. We've convicted other teenagers of posting on Twitter and Facebook offensive comments about British soldiers. Now, the stuff you've just highlighted is far more graver, far more serious than this. Abu Hamza, we convicted him of for making similar statements and banged him up in prison. So why can we not prosecute?
He was involved. Abu Hamza had a link to the terrible kidnapping in the Yemen as well.
No, but we didn't. But we didn't prosecute him for that. We prosecuted him for what he
the Americans are trying to.
The Americans are extraditing him for that. So I'm talking about what our criminal justice system. We have prosecuted and convicted Abu Hamza. You're telling me that this man is al-Qaeda's European ambassador?
I'm not telling you anything.
This is what the authorities tell us, and the authorities tell us that he said all these things, and he incites suicide bombers. Then prosecute the guy, put the evidence before a court. We live in Britain. We don't live in.
So the burden of your song here seems to be there is not a level playing field, for British citizens. Well, although we have to say that Abu Qatada is not.
It's not about British. I mean, the funny thing is, I'm hearing all these people on your show coming in and criticising the European Court of Human Rights. Yesterday's decision was not by the European Court of Human Rights. It was by the Special Immigration Appeals Commission, a British court, which has access to all the intelligence against this man that, for some reason, we can't put in open court. So you're fighting secret evidence anyway in this system where you can't actually challenge the evidence against you. And nevertheless, our British court still said he shouldn't be detained without trial. Now, I don't understand, Nicky, if you're an intelligent guy, if somebody like this, who is accused of being so closely linked to Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda, we've had him for 10 years, and his lawyers say he hasn't been asked a single question.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. Yep, thank you for coming on this morning and setting that out from your perspective, talking about your brother. Fahad Ansari, thank you. Human rights lawyer, Babar Ahmed's, brother-in-law, I do beg your pardon. Right, 9:31, Andy Verity, inflation...
5 Live.
I'm going to bring on Stephen in London. Hello, Stephen. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Nicky.
And let me just bring some others in as well, and I'll tell you why in a minute. James in Reading. Hello, James.
Hi, Nicky.
Hi there. And Darren in South the Midster in East Sussex. Hello, Darren.
Hi.
Hi. Now, I'm bringing on... I think you all are sort of pretty negative about Abu Qatada one way or another. And the reason I say that is we've got Benjamin Ward on from Human Rights Watch. Benjamin Ward, good morning. Hello?
Hi.
Hello, Benjamin Ward, right. James, explain to Benjamin Ward... Well, tell him your feelings about Abu Qatada and why. Then Benjamin can have a conversation with you. James.
Well... I think there's a big disparity between what's going on recently in the last year. Someone like Gary McKinnon, say the Americans wanted to sort of have him extradited and brought over. Obviously the Britons have got a case for keeping him in his human rights. But he wasn't actively, physically, sort of plotting or in mosques sort of preaching. And I think we've got to look at the Human Rights Act, put it in context. But I think, in my sister, for example, she was on a bus behind a bus stop on the bombing in London. So obviously I'm not saying there's bias there, but I'm worried that taxpayers are paying for all the court costs, obviously surveillance, etc., and detention of this person in this country. And I'm not to be honest, I'm not really sure that people know actually what's going on in this country anymore. To be honest, in terms of the finances and the cost it's cost, that money could be well spent somewhere else. That's my point mainly. And then the second point is, I think we could be looking at the dissolution of our part in Europe because of this, on the Human Rights Act.
Okay, and Stephen in London, your point.
Yeah, isn't it ironic, Nicky, that we've got somebody in Wandsworth, Nick, at the moment that believes in speaking out against Islamic extremism. Obviously, Tommy Robinson, I'm sure you're aware of that.
Well, the English Defence League guy.
Yeah, that's right. You've got someone like Abu Qatada whose sermons of his videos were found in a Hamburg flat of the 9/11 hijackers, Mohammed Atta. I mean, we are the laughing stock of the world. And do you know what? I don't care that if evidence was obtained by torture, because we all know he's guilty, and I'm just hoping...
You don't care?
I don't care.
Don't we have to subscribe to the highest standards?
No, we know he's guilty, Nicky. We know he's guilty. His videos were found in the 9/11 flats of these people in Hamburg. He's linked to these Algerian groups. I mean, the guy just taking the mickey out of us, and we are the laughing stock. And I'm just hoping that we got the guts to just and that human rights side. Do not get me talking to him because I would just lose it.
Let's hear from Benjamin Ward. When you hear reactions like that, when you hear emotions like that, Benjamin Ward, and Tommy Robinson being hailed as a kind of hero, what do you say, Benjamin?
Well, look, this is a very difficult case, and I think no one would dispute that. And it is. I think no one would dispute it's gone on for far too long. But the fact is that this man, if he has done the things that the British government and Jordanian government says he's done, should be put on trial in this country where he can get a fair trial. And it's pretty remarkable that he's been in custody, in British custody, for 9 years, and during that whole time, no evidence has been put forward that's actually sufficient to charge him. So absolutely, he should be prosecuted. We believe that terrorism should be prosecuted as a crime. Terrorists are criminals and they should be prosecuted, but they should be prosecuted in a way that respects basic principles of British justice, which means the right to a fair trial and the right not to use tortured evidence.
Darren, do you want to come in here?
Yeah, I was just saying to your intro before saying that an irony is that we chased people like Starbucks the other day for the legal non-paying of taxes with the way that they distribute their monies around the world globally.
And we chase after this, and here we are with someone that has created or done things, supposedly, we actually use the word supposedly at the moment, atrocities around the world.
Has he?
And whilst being in this country.
Has he? Benjamin Ward.
Well, I mean, again, I think the difficulty is, look, he may well have done, but if that's the case, why has he not been prosecuted in the UK? And I think the answer to that is that they would rather the British government would find it more convenient to get rid of him. Well, actually, that's why the case has dragged on for as long as it has.
You see, Stephen, you say you're extolling the virtues of the English Defence League, and you're saying that you don't care if he's... you have a problem with evidence being obtained by torture. You're going against the principles that great men like Winston Churchill, who you should, as a great English patriot, you should be extolling his virtues. You know, pardon me for suggesting you should extol the virtues of Winston Churchill above those of Tommy Robinson.
Well, Winston Churchill, Nicky, was the first... spoke out against the problems of Islamic extremism. If you knew your history, which I'm sure you do, Winston Churchill did speak out against the dangers of Islamic extremism. The fact is, Nicky...
And he fought for the ending of torture as well.
Whatever Benjamin says, tapes of his sermons were found in the flat in Hamburg belonging to Mohammed Atta. It's a fact that he has funded and has been... He was found with loads of money on him and a special envelope marked for Mujahideen in Chechnya. I mean, I think what we should do is just put him on a plane, forget the little fine we're going to get off this pathetic European court.
You've got a lot of evidence against him. Let's bring George here in Slough. George, what do you want to say?
Well, I want to say I'm very concerned about the casual attitude that's being taken to the principle of habeas corpus in
here we go.
in our country.
Here we go.
Well, we have a principle...
Another one uses semantics of law, not...
Well, it's not semantics of law, it's his basic element of English traditions. You should be fighting for it. If you're English Defence League, defence English traditions. Let's hear from George.
The EDL should be standing up for this, as should all British people, because it's a principle that you can't just be thrown into a cell and left there. You should either be charged with a crime or set free. You should either be brought to court or let go. And for too many people, whether it's Abu Qatada or Gary McKinnon or the brother-in-law of the chaplain you had before the news, we should stop just leaving people to rot in jail, and we should either charge them or let them go. And there's been a very, very casual attitude to the ancient and established principle of habeas corpus. And I'm sure all the callers would agree, we need to do something about this guy. He either needs to be charged or let go.
Well, when he was questioned in 2001 over his alleged connections to this German terror cell, as has been pointed out, £170,000 in cash in his home, 805 quid in an envelope for the Mujahideen. Why were no charges? Benjamin Ward, did they miss the bus here?
No, what
Benjamin
happened was
Ward.
that at the end of 2001, Parliament passed a law that allowed foreign terrorism suspects to be indefinitely detained without charge. And it's obviously a lot easier to indefinitely detain someone on the say-so of the Home Secretary than it is to actually assemble a case.
Because of inadmissible evidence and incriminating intelligence.
Yes, and then by the time that law was ruled, was struck out in 2005, they then moved to the idea of getting rid of him. So I think that there was a missed opportunity in 2001 when that arrest was made to put the evidence together. But I think it's not too late. The Jordanians apparently have evidence. I'm sure the security services have evidence to put him on trial here, where he can get a fair trial.
Yeah.
Nicky, can I say one
George, yes, George, please come back. Yeah.
Well, we've had a casual attitude to habeas corpus. We also have quite a casual attitude to the European Court of Human Rights. I mean, I think one of your callers already said this morning, yesterday's decision wasn't on the European Court of Human Rights. But we've had people in the last 24 hours saying we should just ignore the European Court of Human Rights, something that not only we signed up for, but Winston Churchill helped set up.
But when Winston Churchill set it up, it wasn't being abused like it is now. I mean, it's pathetic now.
Because it comes out with a decision you don't like, it's being abused.
Well, the European Court of Human Rights, when it first started, it was a good idea. But the way it is now being abused by human rights lawyers, like that Benjamin clown you got on, I mean, I just hope that this is what I really feel, if we don't put him on a plane, I just hope some rogue criminal...
Careful what you say here. Be very, very careful what you say here, because there are laws on incitement. I'm saying there are laws on incitement. I'm saving you from... You take him out where? To the cinema?
No, I'd take him out with a gun. If someone said to me, I've got 3 months to live, and I had a gun, I would kill.
There are laws. Listen, I'm saving you from yourself. There are laws on incitement to violence. Goodbye. Goodbye. Benjamin Ward. There's a lot of people who are angry with the so-called human rights clowns such as yourself. Benjamin Ward.
Yes, I mean, of course there are. Of course there are. And you know, I think these kinds of controversial cases obviously are the ones that get a lot of media attention. And of course, it's also hard, I think, sometimes for people to think about why, you know, what appear to be quite abstract principles are important and are worth defending, even if it means, you know, that people who are undesirable benefit from them.
But he is here illegally. Should he not have been kicked out years ago?
Well, he was actually granted refugee status because of the persecution he experienced.
He comes
in
on a false passport, then his false passport.
And well, I mean, it's impossible to enter many people enter with false documentation who have a genuine refugee claim. But the thing about the case against him in Jordan is that he was convicted in his absence based on evidence that was obtained, tortured confessions against his accomplices. And that's exactly the risk that he will face if he gets sent back to Jordan. That's why we think it's better for him to be tried here.
Nicky, sorry, can I just jump in?
Darren, yeah.
There is no support for what the gentleman that was cut off said, I have to say, although it must have crossed many people's minds, but it doesn't make it right. The same as anything else that is wrong. There's always a reason for it when it's happening, but we have to accept this. That's what the law's for. What I'm afraid of is currently is our legal system that we have isn't showing enough determination and enough clout within the world for it to really make a difference. And I think that's the problem. That's why we're dilly-dallying over everything that's happening with this guy Abu Hamza. Whether he's right or wrong, at the end of the day, that's what the law should actually promote. But we're not actually being allowed, really, because of all these fundamentals around the world, such as America saying we want him and Jordan saying they want them. Why can't we be a neutral country? He chose his country to, if you like, hide he knew that we were going a bit softer than everyone else. So why can't we hold a neutral court for all these other countries around the world?
No one's saying he's not. Well, people are saying he's not despicable, but you know, the consensus is he's a despicable individual. But we are talking about the law. Listen, thank you, Darren.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much for your call. It's 9:50. We need to take some travel news.
Your call.
Right, I'm going to leave it to Tony and in Harrow. Hi, Tony, and Nino in Cambridge. Morning, and Andrew in London, and Sadiq in Essex. And I will only intervene if somebody's on the point of breaking the law. Andrew, on you go.
Well, I was going to say, let's forget about the whole business for the moment to do with Jordan. The man entered this country illegally. He shouldn't have any rights here, as far as I'm concerned. Whatever rights he was granted should be revoked, and he and his family should be returned to the country from which he arrived, which I believe was not Jordan, it was somewhere else in the Middle East. So let's return him there and let them deal with it. The other point I'd like to make is this business about putting him on trial in this country. We seem to be attempting to take sovereignty through the European human rights legislation over any and every country around the world. It's not for us to be judge and jury over every sovereign country on this planet. Someone else, in this case it's Jordan. They want to try him. Are we not going to respect them? I mean, I think Jordan's a member still of the United Nations and every other United Nations affiliated organisation.
A friendly country, yes.
And everyone holds up the United Nations.
And our royal families have great ties. Our family.
Well, I'm not really interested in royal families.
I'm talking about the links between nations. I'm bolstering your point.
Well, I'm talking about the United Nations. Leave royal families out of it. The issue is that, Jordan is a sovereign country. We should, in the same way that we would expect them, or any other nation on this planet to respect us as a sovereign nation, we should have some respect to them.
Well, that's basically what I'm saying. I want to bring
We
Sadiq
should
in. You've made a lot of
respect
points,
his
and I
right.
want to get Sadiq to respond to them and other people, because we've got other people to talk to, but you made that point very well. Sadiq.
Good morning, Nikki. Nikki, I want all callers to remember this is the same government that told us and lied to us about Hillsborough for 20 years. The same governments that lied to us about Iraq and Afghanistan. So I worry, Nick, whether this is really a race issue that people are calling
And
in
this is the
about.
same man who said on Panorama in an interview in 2001, Bin Laden in the image I have of him, that's the image of a Muslim man who defends the causes of his
If I
nation
can make
against
my
his
point,
enemies.
Nikki?
I'm going to
If
ask
I
you a
can make my
question.
point-
In a
if I
second
can
you
make my
can.
point, Nikki?
And he should
Yeah.
be supported by every Muslim. The question I ask
Right.
you,
Can I make my point,
you
Nikki,
can
please?
make your point in answering the question, and the question is, can you understand why a lot of callers are angry that a man can say stuff like that
Nick,
and come here on a false
I can
passport?
understand
Right.
how people are incredibly angry that our government and our media lied to us about Hillsborough for 20 years, when 96 British lives were lost, and we were fooled and hoodwinked at that. So if the man is guilty, if Abu Qatada is guilty, put him on trial, put the evidence before us, the British public, and then, if he's guilty, throw away the key. But we have been lied to time and time again. So why are we falling for these lies? If the evidence is there, present it. The man has been locked up for 10 years, Nikki. I don't defend what he has said or what he hasn't said. Nikki, I don't know what he has said. Like most of these callers don't know what he has said. They have no idea, nor can they quote what he has said.
Well, I've just quoted you what he said. It was an interview. It's
McKinnon's
an interview with Panorama. I've just quoted you. This is absolutely on the record.
Nikki, right.
Bin Laden, in the image I have of him, that is the image of a Muslim man who defends the causes of... You're not letting me finish. You're not letting me tell people what he said. You're not letting me tell people what he said.
Yeah.
I'm going to try again, and I'll bring you in, Nino. Bin Laden, in the image I have of him, that is the image of a Muslim man who defends the causes of his nation against its enemies and should be supported by every Muslim. Do you believe it's permissible for somebody to die in the course of jihad or war or kill themselves for this? In modern jurisprudence, these are called martyrdom operations. Most scholars agree they are permissible if they achieve the aims of Muslims by fending off Islam's enemies, or they are to resist invasion. No, I'm discussing what he said, and you said it's not on the record, and that is. Nino, good morning.
Good morning. Nikki, I'm a British Sikh, and if this guy is guilty, I would love to throw the book at him. I mean, I'm not one of these namby-pamby liberals. I actually believe in the death penalty. However, unless you can prove somebody guilty in front of the court, then you can't hold them up, you can't send them away, we have to deal with them, and if he has said all these things, we need to throw the book at him, but get him in front of our great establishment, the impartial British justice
You can't throw the
system,
book at him for
which is
saying stuff. That's the problem, can you?
he's inciting violence. He's inciting
Okay.
violence, and that's illegal.
Okay.
He's inciting violence against Jews, Americans,
Yeah.
and all sorts of people.
All right.
Illegal.
Point taken.
They should be throwing the book at him, and throwing the book at everybody else like that, instead of locking them up for 9 or 10 years in jail. Get him in front of a court, string him up.
Tony in Harrow.
Hello there.
Hello, Tony.
First, I would like to make one thing straight. In the Quran, what you just tried to say about what Abu Qatada got quoted, it stayed in the Quran. It stayed in the Quran. Yeah? It stayed in the Quran. And
It's open to interpretation.
people try to demonize Bin Laden, yeah? Apart from blowing innocent people up, which apparently they were doing that, apart from that, Bin Laden or his supporters, they were fighting for the injustice in the Middle East. That's
Okay.
been put under the carpet now.
Well, Bin Laden was fighting for injustice in the Middle East.
Yes, of course. Yeah, he put the
Or was it East
Palestinian
Timor, or was it Kashmir?
issues.
Okay.
Yeah, he put the Palestinian issues on the map.
Right. Andrew,
Yeah,
hi.
there's no
Good
better
morning.
way of doing that.
Good morning, Andrew.
Hello?
Andrew in London, yeah.
Oh, well, I've already made my comment, but I would just like
Make
to...
another one.
Well, I just don't see why we should be putting him on trial and going through the whole legal process and then the appeal process and then having him sitting in a comfortable British jail when he has no rights to be here. Let's just ship him out and his family. End of story, as far as I'm concerned.
Last word to Benjamin Ward.
Hi, yes. I mean, I think the key thing for us to keep in mind here is, the British principles of justice. We don't use torture evidence. We don't torture people. We give them a fair trial. And if we stand by those principles, then that means we can't send this man to Jordan. We need to deal with him here.
Thank you all very much indeed. Have a really good Tuesday. Back tomorrow at 7. Rachel will be here at 6. And another Your Call at 9 o'clock through till 10. Victoria's next.
I can't say I was shocked because we've heard all this before, but I was horrified. There's no mention yesterday on the Radio 4 PM programme about my human rights. What about the human rights of people in this country who don't want to be blown up by suicide bombers?
To work in the immigration service, didn't you? Is that Steve Moxon, yeah?
No.
Oh, it's not. I do beg your pardon. I thought you were someone else. Carry on.
Oh, all right, never mind. Well, that's it. That's all I really wanted to say. I just think, it's all one-sided. This business of these terrorists. It's their human rights that everybody's concerned about, not the human rights of the people they want to blow up.
Do you think he's a danger?
Well, he's clearly a danger because he's in trouble in at least 2 countries. A lot of serious evidence suggesting that he is tied up with these people. Now, the problem is it's extremely difficult to get the evidence, and the human rights business is entirely devoted to stopping people from
First for breaking news and the best live sport.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Your Call. Abu Qatada will be freed on bail later today after winning the latest stage of his long legal fight to avoid deportation to Jordan. Is this a triumph for the rule of law? The charity Freedom from Torture says it is, because he could be tried in Jordan using evidence obtained through torture. Keith Best is its chief executive.
We as a country subscribe to the rule of law, and we must apply that rule of law equally to those people whom we like and those people whom we don't like.
Robin Simcox from the think tank The Henry Jackson Society says he's dangerous and should be kicked out of the country.
This is somebody who came to the country illegally and has spent a decade here encouraging young British Muslims to fight and die in places like Chechnya, Afghanistan, legitimised suicide bombing.
What do you think?
So continuously unsuccessful in securing extradition is because they come across as being a bit ambivalent about torture. And there's no real evidence to suggest that information or evidence acquired by torture is reliable.
Mm-hmm. So, but what about you being opposed to suicide bombers in this country? You're not opposed to them because you want the guy to get off.
No, I think, irrespective of, what people have done, I'm absolutely opposed to suicide bombers, but I don't think...
You don't want them caught, and you don't want the guy sent way to another...
Well, hang on, let Mary finish. Carry on. Sorry, Mary, we didn't just catch that.
There's no evidence that torture is successful in securing good evidence, good quality evidence.
That's not the point of the issue. The point of the issue is...
I think the issue is about torture.
Another guy has come here from another country to blow people up and getting the information out of them by whatever means, because, I absolutely oppose torture, but there are other ways of doing it. They were stopping people from hacking phones and stopping people from hacking into people's computers and all this kind of stuff, so they could actually find something out. Our hands are tied. They have absolute ruthlessness and cynical cruelty, and we're not...
This is the argument, though, Steve, isn't it? Aren't we better than that? Don't we necessarily have to rise above that sort of...
We can't rise above suicide bombers. You don't rise above a suicide bomb. If it goes off, it goes off.
Is he a suicide bomber? Is he encouraging suicide?
I think he's somebody who organises suicide bombing.
Right, okay, that's...
promotes it.
Mary in Manchester, how do you respond to Steve?
Well, I think it's quite interesting that Steve says he absolutely opposes torture, but when it's clear that he doesn't absolutely oppose it, because one of the reasons I think the government advisors...
Are you glad we're taking a strong stance on torture, or are we being too soft on a man many want to see the back of? Abu Qatada is staying, for now, in Britain. Is this a triumph for the rule of law, or are we being too liberal for our own good? 0500 909 693. Text me, 85058. So is this a triumph for the rule of law, the fact that Abu Qatada is staying for now in Britain, or are we just being too liberal for our own good? Are we the suckers? Peter Bone joins us, who takes a hard line on this. He's been on this your coal business before. Tory MP Peter Bone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello to you. And John Cooper, QC.
Good morning, Nicky.
How are you, John? Leading
I'm well. Good to talk to you.
Human rights and criminal barrister. You too. Steve's in Morecambe. Mary's in Manchester. Steve, what do you think?
Well,